Hi there, I'm Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. In this episode of the podcast, Cary Herzberg and I are going to discuss some really cool things that have happened over the last 2 to 3 years in the myopia management industry. And the reason for this is that I personally believe that if you want to be successful in myopia management, you need to stay plugged in to everything that's happening in the industry. It's part of how you build your expertise. And I always say you can grow organically into the expert you were always meant to be. When it comes to myopia, this is part of how you do that. Okay, so for the regular episode, we're going to discuss a few of these topics. In the extended episode, that's for supporters of the Myopia Mindset, you're going to hear even more. And if you're interested in becoming a supporter, if you nerd out about myopia and myopia industry topics, then consider becoming a supporter of the Myopia Mindset podcast. In addition to extended versions of our episodes, you're also going to get a bonus episode each and every month. This month's episode is all about vision by design, why you should attend it, and why it's critically important to the survival and success of our industry as a whole. All right, so consider supporting myopiamindset.com. Thank you so much. Let's get to the episode. All right, welcome to the Myopia Mindset. This is a podcast where myopia matters, where we get into the heads and experiences of myopia experts, orthokeratologists, industry professionals, and academics. Find out what some of the most successful people in this industry are, where they came from, how they got there, what unites us, everything happening in our industry, and all of the things in between. And it has been a while since the last time I podcasted about Ortho-K, myopia management, and our industry. And boy, howdy, has a lot happened in the last 2 years. Ability One Day was launched in Canada and Singapore. GP specialists are gone. Art Optical's Moonlens is now on the market. And nobody can make up their mind about atropine, apparently. And so, I'd like to focus on 3 topics of things that, have happened over the last 2 years. And I've brought on Dr. Cary Herzberg in order to talk about them with me. Cary, welcome back to the program. Welcome back. We've done 1 episode. This is our second. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's just, a lot of fun to be talking on the officially now of the things we discuss between us.
And what he means by officially, listener, is in addition to being my father, Carrie and I worked together for, a long time on the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control, and combined with board of directors and other, personalities and industry professionals, we did great things in the myopia management industry. And Carrie and I never stopped talking about Ortho-K or myopia management after I left the AAOMC back in 2022. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to turn on the mics and get those recordings of our conversations and bring you guys, the listeners, into the conversation. If you have any questions or comments about anything we talk about in this episode or any other episode, myopiamindset.com is our website. myopiamindset@gmail.com is the email address. And with that, Carrie, let's start with the first topic on this list of things that happened over the last 2 years that I wanted to specifically address, which is Euclid bought Medmont and Visionary Optics.
I know, right? Yeah.
When I heard about this, I was like, wow.
Yeah, it was wow, because it's everything's consolidating. And it kind of makes sense in a way because if you're doing all these things that are related, right? Why not just wrap them under one umbrella and you become more efficient at it? So I get that. I was back in the day, we were talking about how underpriced this whole industry was. I remember those, we were talking to a group in China about, at that time I was consulting for that. And they were saying how they completely missed Paragon because they were under 100 million. They had their 100 million and above, and Paragon sold for less than 100 million. They were listed for less. So the company missed an opportunity to acquire a company because it just wasn't valued high enough, which is,
right.
But yes, it at this point, I think we're going to see more and more of this consolidation. There's still a lot of small companies still left, even though they're disappearing, they're going away. So
for the uninitiated, what is Euclid, what is Medmont, and what is Visionary Optics separately?
Yeah. Euclid is an Ortho-K, basically an Ortho-K company. They have roots that go way, way back, but they were also acquired by private equity a while back, in China. So Euclid happens to have a really nice system in China where they're actually most of the hospitals that they did a lot of work with that. So usually in the hospitals in China, they have two systems are used, two Ortho-K systems, and that's what the doctors get to choose from. And Euclid, is influential enough and had enough input back in the day that they actually got a lot of these hospitals that put them on that list. So they're one of two, which is a prime thing because you're going to get then your lens orders and stuff. So the company had a lot of value outside the U.S. and a lot of the talk I did with a lot of these investment companies was the fact is, what do they think was going to happen in the marketplace in the U.S.? Is it going to grow like people think it's going to grow? I mean, it was so undervalued as far as the rest of the world, and it's crazy because the Ortho-K started here. We invented our Ortho-K in the U.S. Stu Grant, and to think that now they were taking a back seat because we don't do as much of it as they do in Europe and in Asia. So that's always been the thing with that. So Euclid has been this long. They had one of the original FDA approvals. I actually was part of that panel that did the FDA approval for them, the original one that became eventually the B&L patent on Ortho-K. The second one, it was in 2004. The first one was the Paragon CRT in 2001. So I was part of that investigation. That was Euclid, and they eventually sold that to B&L to raise capital. And so B&L then used that approval as the VST launched back in 2004. So they go way, way back, and the company's also made topographers. It was a novel idea, but it didn't go over to really well.
Right. And now with GP specialists no longer, being around, Euclid is kind of positioned as one of the premier Ortho-K lenses in the space, right?
Yeah, they always have been. They've always made a really high quality product. And so, they're spaced really well for that. And they've been very successful they have good management. So they carry this out extremely well. So then the idea was to get, the Visionary is a scleral lens lab pretty much. And they do other types of lenses, but they're big time in scleral, a lot of very successful scleral lens. So it gives them that niche right in the scleral lens marketplace, which is another growing field, along with Ortho-K. In some cases, maybe much better growing than Ortho-K, actually. And then Medmont makes the topographers, one of the best topographers on the market. So how could you do wrong with that? Acquiring that is a good idea. So they used in both the Vision, with the sclerals and with the Ortho-K, and So
what is, explain to me then, what is the advantage of a company that makes Ortho-K lenses and then through Visionary makes scleral lenses? What's the advantage? And then picking up a topographer company in addition to that.
You're going to visit. We've had discussions about what's going on with myopia. Is it going to grow or not? This is going to grow. I mean, people are going to need these products, because they're going to go into a practice and say, well, not only should you have our top of the line Ortho-K product, but then you need to have the topographer to measure the corneas to take care of your patients. And then you need to look into the scleral, which is Visionary. It just fits in specialty. It's just all specialty carry. Topography shouldn't be specialty carry. Should be generally everybody should have one, but it's been a slow uptake on that as well. So
my experiences as far as topographers is basically Oculus and Medmont. Those are the two big ones. Those are the big guns, right?
Topcon.
Of course, but huge. In my personal experience with Vision by Design, it was one of my goals to bring in Topcon big time into Vision by Design back when I ran that meeting.
Right.
The last meeting I worked on was 2019 before COVID. So that's why I preface like the big ones for me was Oculus and Medmont, because those are the ones I was used to working with. I have great relationships with multiple people at both companies. They supported the AAOMC at major levels. Couldn't have been happier with the relationship that I had built over the years with them. Right. So, it makes sense to me that, let's say, speculation wise, let's say that your product as Euclid works best with results from a Medmont topographer. Well, it makes sense to kind of shore up that go between, right? Like, in order to ensure that success.
Well, and you're mentioning early on about the Moonlens. They actually, and they're actually in their spiel say that they prefer you to get a Medmont because they think that's the best tool. But then you can use any of these other topographers too. So I mean, it just works. If you get you're opening up these practices, you're going to spend the time in them. Then you get all the resources out of that you can. So they're all related fields. In this. So
and I'm a fan of all products in this space. I've said that before many times on my previous show, and you'll hear it again on this show. I'm a fan of whatever is helping to treat the patient. Topographers are no exception in that regard. And I've seen that, you mentioned Topcon. I've seen each topographer company have, advantages that can be very helpful and useful for an orthokeratology doctor, myopia management specialist. So, it makes sense to me that if you want to, increase success and productivity in this space, why not start to bring these elements together? Oculus, one of the big news items back when I was with the AOMC and doing the other show, was when they bought Wave, and the same kind of thing, right? Like, Wave is an advanced, Ortho-K design system, and you see a lot of success with.
They use Pentacam.
Ortho-K with Pentacam. I've seen it. Yeah.
A lot of the Wave doctors use Pentacam now, and basically that's grown out of that very astute thing that Mike Wobler and Oculus did, which was acquire. It's a natural fit with the Wave lenses. They got nothing. Like I said again, this industry has been so undervalued for so long. It's like it's almost a no-brainer. I mean, you're gonna get a good value out of it. And if you do the right kind of thing, you're growing it like you should, then this thing will all grow for you.
Right.
So I think these are good moves on these companies' parts to acquire these businesses.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The second topic that I have on my list for you and I specifically discuss is CooperVision and the AOA. They announced the Myopia Collective.
Right.
What is that? What is the Myopia Collective?
Well, they're really specially, they're really getting doctors to focus in on myopia, and they're going to, and bless their hearts, CooperVision is taking them and doing the education with the AOA and sponsoring them and taking them around. I know several of the doctors that are part of that. And, I think it's really a good move on their part. It's you have to do the education, you have to grow it. That's all what we do now. I mean, a lot of the work that I did with J&J, and then when before J&J, was just growing practice. I'd go out to practices and just go into practice and take a look at what they're doing and make suggestions, improvements in what they were doing, so they become more efficient, more successful. So I think this is, again, if you want doctors to do myopia, and you got the 20/80 rule, right? So, you're going to concentrate on those doctors that are really motivated. And here's a group of them now, and very smart on CooperVision's part to do that.
The 20/80 rule being that 20% of practitioners who could do Ortho-K are going to end up doing 80% of the cases.
Or myopia, anything. Any area of specialization we're talking about that's done by 20% of the doctors end up doing 80% of the work, the patient fits. So whatever it is.
Right. And, I think it's interesting that CooperVision, because I was listening to, with the advent of me getting back into podcasting, I've also been listening to a lot more podcasts. I took a break for a while. And the other day, I think I was listening to, it was a podcast about movies or something, and they had pre-made ad block inserted into the podcast. And I heard a CooperVision MySight ad.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I was like, this is incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
But it begs the question, how much of the future of myopia management is in MySight? Because I rarely ever hear anything about Paragon CRT anymore.
I saw some stuff on them that they're, they did some helping doctors grow their Paragon CRT. And I think it was actually reference the fact that some doctors will do only a few Paragon fits and do mostly MySight. And then they had other practices in their experience that are doing a lot more CRT and less MySight.
Yeah.
So I think, it's like we talked about again, you have to keep your hand in everything. I think there's going to be patients that do better with MySight. There's patients that do better with CRT. And so, keeping both of these going and very healthy is really a good idea. But it's nice to see companies step out and start, push, getting on the air with product, especially if you're using that product. It's helpful, to see that happening. But you got to remember that in the end, the doctor still is there that's got to talk to the patient. It's the patient might ask them a question about, I heard this thing about MySight. I mean, that could happen, but chances are the greatest input's going to happen when the doctor starts the conversation and says, did you know we do myopia management here and what that's all about?
Yeah. I guess my point was that, and this is why I used the 2080 example specifically for orthokeratology, because I have heard about some, accounts still doing Paragon CRT. I'm not saying it's like going away or anything. It's just there's been such an influx in MySight. And, I imagine that soon we're going to have like a Johnson & Johnson ability one day, like I mentioned in the rundown, like there's been a release in Canada and Singapore. So one can only imagine that the release for the United States is coming, right? And it makes me wonder if we're going to have a future where, because we've always said we wanted myopia management to become the status quo in, in optometry. And it makes me wonder if there's going to be a new status quo, which is the, MySight, or one day that's what everybody does. And in order to set yourself above and beyond the rest, you're going to have to do Ortho-K. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I just have live experience with this because we did J&J, we did a boot camp for the Canadian doctors down in Jacksonville recently. And they have spectacles, they have MySight, they have one day, and they have, ability overnight. And most of them are maintaining that ability overnight is still making about 40% of their fits.
Okay.
So, and then the rest of it's being shared by MySight, equally well with spectacles usage. So I think it's holding up pretty well. There's ability overnight gives you that chance to have the software designed lens, which is nice because the doctor doesn't need that much upfront expertise to work with this. So I think those kinds of ideas are going to be very popular in the future. You mentioned Moonlens is another one. It's very well done program. And these kinds of things coming out are going to foster more and more fitting because you don't need the doctor to to have all this expert knowledge that he needs to have. They can actually use the software programs to do this. So that I think this is the future. A lot of it's the future, and I think Ortho-K will maintain its presence. It's just too cool a thing to do, and it's very effective for controlling myopia. So I mean, with children's lifestyle, I always felt like I wanted to give my kids the ultimate freedom, which is basically to mean not to have to wear anything during the day.
Right.
So they could do anything they wanted, if it was swimming or whatever activity they wanted to do, not to worry about having contacts on. So I think that always is going to be an attractive option. And the other thing is that with Ortho-K is that they keep the lenses at home. They don't have to worry about the kid taking them to school and what could happen there, And so I think that's got a lot of positives. Parents have more control.
Right. So what can we expect out of the Myopia Collective? Like, what should we be expecting about the future with them?
I think these are going to be I think these are going to be lecturers. And doctors are going to be very influential. The next generation of doctors are going to grow myopia, as far as the... Yeah. So I think they're going to be leadership quality.
We desperately need,
Yes. Yeah.
At the AAOMC, as the executive director, for that organization, when I was with them, we tried to tackle these. I don't know why they were so difficult, but we were trying to tackle issues of like, how do we get into schools? How do we present an industry neutral mechanism to kind of help the up and coming new generation who's interested in myopia management and Ortho-K, because I think education is sorely needed as early as we can get it in the hands of the next generation of eye doctors. So I'm very excited to see what the Myopia Collective can do.
It looks exciting. Yes, I'm very positive about that.
All right, I got one more on the list of things that I specifically wanted to ask you about, which is Aculens launched a Scleral Ortho-K design. What is this about?
Yeah, the Scleral Ortho-K, I don't know if listeners are aware, but I had the original patent on Scleral Ortho-K. This was back in 2006. So I was actually fitting scleral lenses, back in the 90s. This is a macro lens at the time. And so, doctors would look at the lenses that my patients would be wearing. They said, what was this, out of the 30s? Because they saw the big lens. They didn't know what it was. So 2006, when I had the Scleral Ortho-K design, most doctors weren't even fitting sclerals. They were too intimidated by that, but I was fitting this advanced lens. Okay, so the Aculens is not approved for overnight. It's a design that actually has got the Ortho-K built into it, into the scleral platform, and it works pretty well. And the patient wears it during the day, and it corrects their vision like a scleral does. And then when they take the lenses off, then they can see, which is kind of cool too. So it does a little bit different than most sclerals. Being a scleral lens, it's very comfortable to wear during the day. And I can't speak for the company, but I would think the thought process would be design something, to get this thing approved for overnight wear. So eventually you can do, FDA approved overnight wear. We actually had the whole thing done with my design, but and we did a retrospective study, but nobody wanted to take the cost on. They couldn't see the marketplace. Now, today, there's a lot of off-label Scleral Ortho-K designs that are coming through, like platforms like Wave and other ones that actually design the sclerals off the platform, and then the patients wear them. Very successful lens design.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So that's it'll be easier to fit than maybe designing something like that, like a Wave lens.
Yeah.
But again, it's something that's going to be really comfortable and easy for the patient to wear, and then, like I said, it has its benefits. So
right, and if it's approved for overnight wear, are we talking about two different use cases? Then you're either wearing it during the day or at night?
Yeah. If it's approved for overnight, you can, you probably make more sense to wear the lens 6 to 8 hours at night and just fix your vision and then be done with it.
Right. Gotcha. All right, that's it for this regular version of the Myopia Mindset podcast. Supporters get an extended full discussion about all of the topics and more that Carrie and I discussed. And if that seems appealing to you, I would highly recommend becoming a supporter at myopiamindset.com. I know you're interested. You've made it this far in the podcast. You get a bonus episode each and every month. Our bonus episode for this month was about vision by design and why it is so critically important to the success of our industry. We talked about it for almost 2 hours. I think 6 minutes short of 2 hours. We talked about the history of it, like why it's valuable, where it's come from and where it's going, because Carrie and I were there from the very beginning. And I want you to know that the Myopia Mindset is very special to me. This is my main gig. It's my mission. It's what I'm passionate about. My goal with this podcast is to provide inspiration, education, motivation to get you fired up every episode about doing better in myopia management, becoming more successful, getting engaged in these topics, hearing from people who have been successful in this space. And if you believe in what I'm doing and you're interested in more, consider supporting us. MyopiaMindset.com is where you do that. You click on the subscriber button. We got a Substack, and it's basically just the price of a cup of coffee each week. So if you enjoyed what you heard or saw thus far, and if Carrie and I were in the car with you or washing dishes with you or walking the dog with you, and we were like, hey, would you buy us a cup of coffee just to continue the conversation? And you would, then please consider becoming a subscriber. Support the Myopia Mindset podcast. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next one.